Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In meeting 14, we are going to talk about negotiating part 2. Negotiations are when two people or groups of people try to agree about something. To negotiate means to discuss and try to reach an agreement between two people or groups about a deal or a problem. People negotiate all the time about all kinds of things. Governments and political groups negotiate about decisions that will affect their populations. Business negotiate about cost and prices. Individual people negotiate with their bosses, teachers, and parents. Disagreeing or rejecting a deal. I'm afraid this is not a good starting point. I'm really sorry, but we can't agree on this. I'm afraid I have a few reservations or worries about this point. This doesn't really work for me. The salary was a bit of a sticking point. The salary was a bit of lowball offer. Persuading and compromising. I totally understand where you're coming from, but as you know, this could be the last contract of the player's career. I'm confident we can come to some kind of understanding. I'm sure we can come to an agreement that suits both parties. What if we were to meet halfway? Why don't we meet in the middle? I'm prepared to compromise, but you have to compromise too. We might be able to give you more money if you work a few more hours. Agreeing or accepting a deal. I can see this part of the offer is very generous, and I think we're in the same ballpark in terms of the figures. This is definitely something I could take back to the player. Let me get back to him and we'll carry on talking in the morning. I completely, I totally, I wholeheartedly agree. That's a fair point. I think we can both agree that I see where you're coming from. Stages of negotiation. In order to achieve a desirable outcome, it may be useful to follow a structured approach to negotiation. For example, in a work situation, a meeting may need to be arranged in which all parties involved can come together. In order to achieve a desirable outcome, it may be useful to follow a structured approach to negotiation. For example, in a work situation, a meeting may need to be arranged in which all parties involved can come together. The process of negotiation includes the following stages: preparation, discussion, clarification of goals, negotiate towards a win-win outcome, agreement, implementation of a course of action. Preparation. Before any negotiation takes place, a decision needs to be taken as to when and where a meeting will take place to discuss the problem and who will attend. Setting a limited time scale can also be helpful to prevent the disagreement continuing. This stage involves ensuring all the pertinent facts of the situation are known in order to clarify your own position. In the work example above, this would include knowing the rules of your organization, to whom help is given when help is not felt appropriate, and the grounds for such refusals. Your organization may well have policies to which you can refer in preparation for the negotiation. Undertaking preparation before discussing the disagreement will help to avoid further conflict and unnecessarily wasting time during the meeting. Discussion. During this stage, individuals or members of each side put forward the case as they see it as their understanding of the situation. Key skills during this stage include questioning, listening, and clarifying. Sometimes it is helpful to take notes during the discussion stage to record all points put forward in case there is need for further clarification. It is extremely important to listen, as when disagreement takes place, it is easy to make the mistakes of saying too much and listening too little. Each side should have an equal opportunity to present their case. Clarifying goals. From the discussion, the goals, interests, and viewpoints of both sides of the disagreement need to be clarified. It is helpful to list these factors in order of priority. Through this clarification, it is often possible to identify or establish some common ground. Clarification is an essential part of the negotiation process. Without it, misunderstandings are likely to occur, which may cause problems and barriers to reaching a beneficial outcome. Negotiate towards a win-win outcome. This stage focuses on what is termed a win-win outcome, where both sides feel they have gained something positive. Positive through the process of negotiation, and both sides feel their point of view has been taken into consideration. A win-win outcome is usually the best result. Although this may not always be possible, through negotiation it should be the ultimate goal. Suggestions of alternative strategies and compromises need to be considered at this point. Compromises are often positive alternatives, which can often achieve greater benefit for all concerned compared to holding to the original position. Agreement. Agreement can be achieved once understanding of both sides' viewpoints and interests have been considered. It is essential for everybody involved to keep an open mind in order to achieve an acceptable solution. Any agreement needs to be made perfectly clear so that both sides know what has been decided. Implementing a course of action. From the agreement, a course of action has to be implemented to carry through the decision. The win-lose approach to negotiation. Negotiation is sometimes seen in terms of getting your own way, driving a hard bargain, or beating off the opposition. While in the short term, bargaining may well achieve the aims for one side, it is also a win-lose approach. This means that while one side wins, the other loses, and this outcome may well damage future relationship between the parties. It also increases the likelihood of relationship breaking down, of people walking out or refusing to deal with the winners again, and the process ending in a bitter dispute. Win-lose bargaining is probably the most familiar form of negotiating that is undertaken. Individuals decide what they want, then each side takes up an extreme position, such as asking the other side for much more than they expect to get. Through haggling, the giving and making concessions, a compromise is reached, and each side's hope is that this compromise will be in their favor. A typical example is haggling over the price of a car. Number one, what do you want for it? Number two, I couldn't let it go for under £2,000. Number three, I'll give you £1,000. Number four, you must be joking. Number five, well, £1,100 and that's my limit. £1,900, £1,300, 107, £1,500. Okay, done. The following are examples of statements might be used by a good negotiator. For example, number one, you've expressed your point very clearly and I can now appreciate your position. However, number two, it is clear that you are very concerned about this issue, as I myself. Yet, from my viewpoint, Instead of saying, "You're making me waste a lot of time by carrying on with this argument," the same point could be presented as, "I'm not able to spend a lot of time on this problem. I wonder if there is any way we could solve it quickly." Negotiating at work. One of the best ways to examine the process of informal negotiation is to look at it in action via some example. Example 1, negotiating a change in responsibilities or job crafting. Suppose that you have been doing some thinking about your career and your future. You have realized that to move forward in your chosen direction, you need an opportunity to develop your management skills. You decide to ask your manager if this might be possible and set up a meeting explaining that it is about a career development. This is what we call as preparation. In the meeting, you explain about your chosen career direction and the skills that you need to develop. Your manager asks whether you intend to stay in the organization and where you see yourself in a few years' time. You are honest and explain that you would like to stay, but only if you have the opportunity to develop your skills and potentially take on more responsibilities. This is discussion and clarification of goals. Your manager says that she has been thinking about employing a temp to help with a project that you're currently working on, which is about to expand. She wonders if you would like to manage the temp. However, she is concerned that your lack of management experience may make it harder for the temp to get up to speed quickly. You suggest that you could schedule regular weekly meetings with her to discuss any issues and also jointly agree an induction process. She agrees that this would be reasonable and suggests a regular 15-minute slot, negotiating for a win-win outcome and agreement. The next day, your manager asks you to set in train in the process for finding a temp. She offers to help you to interview potential candidates and you accept. Implementation of a course of action. Example 2, negotiating a pay rise. In a regular meeting, your manager asks you if you would be prepared to take on some new responsibilities at work. You are keen to do so because you can see the additional work will be interesting. However, you are also concerned about the impact this might have on your work-life balance because you already work long hours. You ask to consider the question. In discussion with your partner later, they suggest that you ask for additional pay to reflect your new responsibilities. They also suggest that you might be able to pass some of your old responsibilities to someone else. You take time to research what other people in your organization with your proposed new responsibilities are paid. The next time you meet your manager, you ask about both additional pay and if there is any scope to pass any of your previous work to anyone else to free up your time. You explain that your research shows that people with the new responsibilities are generally paid a bit more than you, and that you are concerned about not being able to do the new work justice. Your manager agrees to increase your salary to the average for those responsibilities. He adds that passing responsibilities to others will not be possible because there are currently not enough people to cover the work. However, he is currently recruiting some new staff who should be in a place in a few months, and you might then pass some work over. You ask if perhaps paid overtime would be possible for 3 months until more staff can be recruited. Your manager says that he will consider it. The next day, your manager sends you an email to say that paid overtime is not possible within the budget, especially if he is going to pay you more. However, he asks you to be involved in drawing up job description for the new staff. so that you can be sure that you will be passing on some of your workload. You reply agreeing to all this and set a date to start to take on the new work. Now let's take a look at the expression used in negotiation. The first one is to bargain. To discuss the condition of an agreement to negotiate, you can also use this as a noun. Something can be a bargain to refer to products being sold for a really good price. For examples, you can't bargain with him. He's very inflexible. Number two, this laptop was such a bargain. I paid half as much as you paid for yours, and mine is much faster. Number two, bottom line, the most important factor. The bottom line is that we cannot raise both salaries and bonuses. Number three, alternative, a choice that could be better than the present situation. For example, let's consider the alternatives before deciding on the best candidate for this position. Number four, to reach consensus, to agree on a matter that initially at first you disagreed upon. For example, after a really long debate, they managed to reach consensus on the issue of sick leave. Number five, counter proposal, an alternative solution you offer when you disagree with the one already presented. For example, we came with a counter proposal, but they weren't open to negotiation. Deadlock, a point in a discussion which takes you nowhere because people cannot reach agreement. For example, we reached deadlock quite early in the discussion because they weren't willing to listen to our arguments and they didn't make any counter proposals. Highball, lowball. The highball means to ask for a lot more than you think your partner will agree to offer you. On the contrary, when you lowball, you offer much less than you think is acceptable. For examples, they started the negotiation by highballing their expectation, but we saw right through it. I thought my boss was going to lowball by giving me a really small rise, but he was reasonable. Leverage, something that gives you power in a negotiation. For example, the supermarket chain really wanted that land, but the owner didn't give in easily. He had a lot of leverage because the position was ideal. Beginning the negotiation and setting the agenda, you can say, let's start by having a look at the agenda. Or before we begin, shall we have a look at the main points on the agenda? Should we have a look at the main points for today's discussion? Making suggestions and proposals. We think the best way is we propose that we recommend that I'd like to suggest a solution. Listening and asking for proposals. What are your views on? Do you have any suggestion for? Would you like suggest a course of action for? How do you feel about arguing for proposals and views presented? The most important reason for this is I'm basing my solution on three ideas, on 3 points, on 3 reasons. Firstly, secondly, last but not least. One of the key reasons for this is agreeing with proposals. For example, I agree with your suggestion. I think your proposal is acceptable. That sounds great to us. Disagreeing with proposals and giving reasons for disagreement. I have some reservations about. Unfortunately, our position is different from yours. I am afraid we can't agree on. compromising. We might be able to work on if you could, we could offer you, if you think you can agree on offering you is the best way we can do right now. However, we need your approval on in exchange for would you agree to? Clarifying. Let me make sure I got your point. I'm not sure I understood your position. Could you please tell me again how you feel about? I just want to make sure I got this part straight. Concluding, let's look at what we decided to do. Shall we try to sum up the main points of our discussion? Let's sum this up really quickly to make sure we are on the same page.